are listening to CIP Podcast, the Study Abroadcast, Season 4, Episode 5. I'm your host, Eva. In this show, we explore the world of study abroad, offering advice, insights, and travel stories, bridging perspectives and cultures along the way. On this episode, we will be speaking with the University of Guelph exchange student, hearing her stories and asking her to unpack her experience now that she has returned home. So let's get right into it. Today on the show, we are pleased to welcome Hannah. To get started, can you tell our listeners a little about yourself and your exchange experience?
Yeah, so my name is Hannah, and I'm a fourth-year history student here at the University of Guelph. And I spent my semester abroad at the University of Aberystwyth in Wales. And I got back a little over 4 months ago now. I think it was just like the 4-month anniversary, like last week.
Did you always see yourself as a traveler, or were you venturing outside of your comfort zone?
I was definitely going outside my comfort zone. All of my travel experience before the exchange was in Canada and the United States. So going to Europe was a little bit more nerve-wracking to me, as I'd never been that far away from home before. There's a level of security I have here because everything is so familiar. I was definitely a little bit nervous about traveling, but I learned a lot while I was in the UK. I gained a lot more confidence in myself as a traveler or a capable adult, I guess, because when you travel with friends or by yourself, you kind of just have to figure it out on your own, but it always worked out in the end. You're always going to figure it out. So I definitely, if I have any advice, it's don't be worried about traveling because you'll figure it out. It's a lot easier, I think, than we build it up to be in our heads.
It sounds like you had this amazing experience abroad. What was it like returning home? Were you feeling bored, relieved, or excited about coming back home?
I definitely had a lot of mixed emotions. I was really excited to be home and reunited with my friends and my family. It felt good to be in a place that was so familiar to me, and I wasn't constantly adjusting to a new city or a new country or living out of my backpack. But I was also really sad to leave the UK. I really, really, really loved Wales and Aberystwyth. The friends that I made while being there and just the life that I carved out for myself while being abroad was really, really amazing. So I was very sad to leave that. I found after the first initial weeks of being home, I was slightly bored because I think the novelty of being home and reunited with everybody had kind of worn off. And being on the exchange, you're so excited and busy. You're always going on trips. You're saying yes to all these opportunities. And then coming home, I had a very different routine. And I found that a little bit challenging to readjust to.
Thanks, Hannah. You've been back home now for a few months and have had some time to reflect on this experience. How did you grow from this study abroad opportunity?
I feel like I came back a completely different person than when I left. I learned a lot about myself. I feel more confident in myself, my abilities, my education. On the study abroad, you're really just thrown into things, and so you kind of have to adjust fast. I also feel like you will most likely be probably going alone, and most people don't go with friends or people that they know. So you'll really get the chance to almost get to know yourself because I was interacting with so many new people. I had the opportunity to really think about my past experiences, who I am, how I present myself, just how I get to know people. And I hadn't really had the opportunity to do that in a while. And so I feel like that really helped me grow a lot because I was getting to know so many new people, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just feel like in general, the study abroad is such a unique experience. Mine, I was gone for 5 months, which is not a very long period of time, but so much happens to you in that period of time and so many things are changing that you grow a lot and you learn a lot about yourself.
While being abroad, did you gain any deeper insights into global issues, politics, religion, history, globalization, climate change, etc.?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it really helped me learn a lot more about other perspectives. I feel like I've always tried to be, I guess, what you would call like a global citizen and try to be aware of these perspectives. But I think there's just certain things that you can't understand unless you spend time in that country, right? Unless you're actually there. And so I found it really interesting to be in the UK, especially as a history student. I was really excited to see how they approached history, how it was taught differently there. They have such a different perspective on like North America than we do here. And so growing up here, I was excited to see kind of how I could learn about, America and Canada in my classes from a very different perspective than, I've been taught. So that was really, really neat.
That sounds amazing. And what about in terms of cultural insights? Did you notice any differences in terms of social norms, behaviors, or communication styles?
This was one of my favorite things about being abroad. And I was talking with all my international friends about this topic. I feel like even though we spent a lot of time together, we always came back to talking about how different our experiences growing up were, how we understand education, how we understand politics. And it was really fun learning about all their different upbringings and how they kind of experience making friends, which is different. And I think one thing that I noticed, it was actually quite hard for me to adjust to in the first few months. In the UK, instead of like asking, how are you doing when they see somebody, they say, you okay? Which for me, that kind of is a more personal question, I guess, and that kind of implies that you don't seem okay. And so I found it kind of shocking when people would ask me if I was okay, because again, like I just find it to be like a personal question, but then I quickly realized that it's just pleasantries to them. It's just kind of as when we say, how are you doing? That was one, I guess, communication style that was different that I really, really did notice.
That is very interesting. How about in terms of your personal or professional goals in life? Did that stay the same or did they somewhat change?
I think my professional goals are pretty similar to before I left. I definitely see travel as a bigger part of my future than I did previously. I always kind of wanted to travel a lot, but now I know that I will make it a top priority in my life because it was such an amazing experience. I think that in terms of professional goals, like I said, I feel like it's pretty similar. It definitely, I think, changed maybe, whether or not I might go to grad school. Grad school has always been kind of part of my plan. And now, after the study abroad, I'm kind of reconsidering if that's something that I'm interested in, just because of some experiences that I had, some things that I learned in the classes and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of where maybe more like an academic goal might be changing. But yeah.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. What aspects of your life abroad have you integrated into your life now that you're home?
I think the biggest change I've made is in the social aspect of my life. Near the end of high school, I became a very introverted person, and I think COVID just reinforced my self-isolating tendencies. But this experience really forced me outside of my comfort zone to get out of my shell. And now being social, going out, meeting new people, making connections is really, really important to me. And nurturing those connections, whatever they may be, is kind of now a number one priority in my life. I've always like appreciated and loved my friends, but now it feels very different, I guess. It's hard to explain. It feels much more important and intense, I guess, in a good way, in a very good way. Just the way I view relationships is different because of the exchange, I think. The connections that you make while you're away are so unique. The experience can't be really replicated anywhere else. And so I think that the friendships you make are so specific there. And it just really made me appreciate it even more because you know that you have a finite amount of time with those people. You're only there for maybe a few months, or maybe if you're there for the year, but you only have a certain amount of time that you're going to be living in that place with those people. So I think it really made me value like connection a lot more and prioritizing that in my life.
Thank you. Some say that experience of re-entry is more challenging than your initial move abroad. Has this been your experience?
I would say that it has been my experience. I think leaving was hard in a very different way. The first month was pretty difficult for me, but I knew that I was coming home in the summer. And so I think having that knowledge that you're going to be coming home and that you're going to see your family again and you're going to be returning to this place that you've been in, it's different versus when you leave the exchange, you can't ever really recreate the experience. You can't go back to that. Like you can go visit the city again, but you won't be living there again. You won't be with those people again. So it's not exactly going to be the same, I guess. Those connections are still there and they're very important. It's just different from when you leave home. Because, like I said, you're coming back. I also found it really hard because I feel like I changed a lot and it was difficult for me to reconcile like the two worlds or the two versions of myself. Coming back was kind of weird because on the exchange, like I said, you change so drastically, or at least I felt like I did. And I learned a lot in such a short period of time. And it can be hard to put that into words or put that into kind of perspective. And so I found it hard because when I came back, I felt like, I was coming back into something very familiar, but I felt like I had changed a lot. So it was hard for me to, I guess, readjust to my old life, so to speak. I found that part kind of hard.
I can totally understand that, Hannah. Thanks for sharing this with us. We will end this with an easy one. What advice would you give to exchange students who have recently returned home?
I'd say just take the time to really think about your experience abroad. Don't force yourself to rush back into things. I think take stock of all the things that happened to you, how you changed, what you want out of your life now. And yeah, don't force yourself to just get back into things. I think another thing is I journaled a lot while I was abroad. And so I'd say just if you want to journal while you're abroad, but also journal when you get home, it's a really good way to get those feelings out, get those kind of words out, I guess, and put it in your experience into perspective. So that would be one thing that I would say. Plus, it's just like really special, I think, to have those memories. Like when you look back on your journals, you'll have memories of your study abroad that you probably would have forgotten if you didn't write them down. And same thing with coming back. And then you can also look at how far you've come or how things have changed. And that can also help you in readjusting, I think.
Well, that's all for today's episode of the Study ABROADcast. Don't forget to explore your own study abroad opportunities on the CIP website, uoguelph.ca/CIP, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Our Instagram handle is CIP_Guelph. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Hannah for sharing her advice, insights, and travel stories. Stay tuned to our next episode where we look to unpack the study abroad experience even further.